Well, good morning and welcome to our morning briefing presented by the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. I'm Jeff Catula, president of the Chamber. Before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsors this morning, Advanced Surgical Hospital, Blueprints, CNX Resources, Peacock Keller, and Single Source Property Solutions for supporting this program. This morning, we're pleased to welcome Brandon Mendoza, the Executive Director of NAIOP Pittsburgh. Brandon, good morning.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going? Thank you for having me, and thank you to all of your members and your board members as well.
Well, thank you for being with us this morning and sharing your time with us. Now, let's start a little bit about telling our participants about NAIOP, your organization, and what it does.
Thanks, Jeff. So NAIOP is the Commercial Real Estate Association. Our members are developers and brokers and folks in the industry. So engineers, architects, finance, legal, and construction, and some other elements as well. We are we're a trade association, so we advocate on behalf of our members in their interests. A lot like a Chamber of Commerce, except for our area is development, in commercial real estate in general.
Well, our organizations, NAIOP and the Chamber, have been partners for a long time, and I just want to start out by thanking you for your continued partnership. It's good for both of our organizations.
Yeah, and I really think it's a model for the region. I'd like to build some stronger relationships with some of our other chambers in the region. But I think the model that you and I have and our organizations have, is a real model. You are a big part of the engine in the region. And obviously, like a lot of our members are investing in your county and have invested in your county. So it only makes sense that we're on the same page.
Well, thank you for saying that. We do appreciate your partnership. Brandon, as you know, when we invited you to be on this morning, we're using these opportunities to really educate our members about COVID-19 and its effects on the economy. And this morning, we wanted to concentrate on real estate, which you're very well versed at. So let's start concerning, how do you think the real estate industry is going to be most impacted by the current COVID situation we're in?
Appreciate that, Jeff. And let me just say a disclaimer, almost like a lawyer. I am not a commercial real estate expert. I lead a trade association that advocates on behalf of the commercial real estate world. So I have to be abreast of what's going on, but a lot of my knowledge is about how to run an association and advocacy and lobbying and whatnot. But that being said, I get a lot of firsthand information, obviously, and especially in a situation like this, we have done a number of surveys of our membership. We've done a number of settings like this where we've had some debriefs on issues. So I've got a lot of insight right now, but I did want to throw out, I'm not a broker and I'm not a developer. A lot of my information is from them, my members. But, I guess I'll break it down a little bit by market segment, if you will. Obviously, this is, I'm sure you guys have heard this 1,000 times. We're in unprecedented times, for every industry. But I will say in the commercial real estate world, there are short-term winners in this, and then the long-term situation is unclear for a lot of the segments, but I'll go by segment. I'll start with the bright spots a little bit. Industrial and warehouse. In the short term, this market segment looks like a safe bet. Given the growing needs of logistics centers and sort centers, from Amazon to Target to Walmart to you name it, if you are an online retailer and even like a grocer, and you have to move a lot of product across the U.S., that's still looking like a safe bet even in these times. As a matter of fact, Amazon stock is way up and they're hiring over 100,000 folks. So that that tells you how they are. Now, in the long term, we have to see if that creates a bubble, right? I mean, in this situation, the demand is through the roof, but you could also overproduce and not need that. Now, obviously, somebody like Amazon is probably able to absorb that and not be in trouble, but we'll see about some of the other retailers. So I'll move on to like the office segment. In the short term, obviously, it's taking a hit. I'm working from my home office right now, as is probably 95% of your members. And even if we are in our offices, the staff in those offices are very limited. So in the short term, it's taken a hit. In the long term, it's unclear. I mean, you could see a situation where firms actually need more square footage for less folks to give more room in this setting. And also, I would say in this setting, I do think that the open office, the Google shared offices and whatnot, I do think that those are, are not in the interest, I don't think that those will be in favor in the long term, if you will. I think you're going to see a lot more of a move to, to walls and space in between your employees, even outside of the pandemic. I just think from a hygienic standpoint, I think a lot of folks are just going to want that. Another kind of a bright spot, I guess, if you will, lab and medical. If you're working with a hospital center on lab space, clean rooms and whatnot, you're probably okay in this environment. All right, now I'll move on to the spots with the most worry. I obviously don't need to to say this to a lot of folks, but hospitality sector, it's in jeopardy in the short term. And obviously we've got a lot of our members that have investments in that sector. But obviously our members have most of our members have a diversified investment strategy, so it's not all in that sector. But we have a number of folks with some big investments in that sector. In my opinion, they're going to need federal and state support. But obviously we're going to see how that plays out over the summer and into the fall. I do know from some of my contacts in hospitality that if they can make it through these next 3 to 6 months, a lot of events and programs were moved, to 2021. And I think that you could see, the ones that make it through could have a great 2021 if the spread of the virus is contained. I'll move on to retail. Similar to hospitality, obviously, it depends, your brick and mortar, I think some of those folks are in trouble in the short term. It's yet to be seen what they have in terms of an impact in the long term. Obviously, with retail, it depends on if you're if you're online and if you're Amazon or Walmart, or if you're a grocer, like a Giant Eagle or Aldi, you're okay. You're doing well right now, and you'll be okay on the other end. But if you're a clothing retailer, or if you're somebody that needs foot traffic in your stores, in the short term, it's a hard hit, and it's yet to be seen what's the impact in the long term. And then on the last one on here, is multifamily. Really, I think that this will go the way of the economy. So I think in a down economy, the investments in multifamily will be down as well. And similarly, when the economy starts to bounce back, you'll see those investments start to play out. I will say, one thing that we have in our favor is that this happened mid-year. There's a lot of stuff that's going to have to get done. So construction, in my opinion, is going to be a bright spot in the short term because there's a lot of money and investments that were already made, projects already on their way in the middle at the start of construction season when this started. So I think the construction industry in general, we just got word last night that May 1st, the governor has allowed construction to open up across the state. Obviously, we're still waiting on, to see what his plan is in terms of guidance on health concerns. But the good thing is that construction will open up on May 1st. So again, it's a segment by segment look. I will say again, I am not a broker or developer. A lot of my knowledge is just from discussions with my members.
You did have an interesting point when you mentioned that employers may be looking for more space to keep their employees farther apart. How do you think employers and especially tenants' priorities may change as we move forward in this new dynamic?
Well, there's a lot of speculation out there. There's speculation about, the end of the office and whatnot. And I don't think that we're there. I think everybody is going to take a moment to evaluate how and where their employees are interacting. And I think, there are several scenarios. There's a scenario where, you could see a move to maintain a certain segment of your employee base to work from home on certain days, right? And then you could see a scenario where that happens, but also you still need more square footage to house employees because now you need to have, just a certain amount of space in between your employees.
Now, you brought up an interesting point because the Pittsburgh Business Times recently published a survey of our region's CFOs that said that 70% of them expect that the employees that are currently working offsite will remain offsite in some capacity moving forward. Do you see that moving forward as well? Are you hearing that from your members as they deal with tenants and people looking for space? You expect that trend to grow, that there will be some type of remote working situation moving forward?
I think in the short term, for sure. I think in the short term, and this is probably the next 3 to 6 months, I think you're going to see a lot of folks maintain, a certain percentage of their workforce, like just working from home or some sort of a rotation, certain folks will work from home on certain days and certain folks will work from home on other days just to maintain that space. But I think in the long term, especially in industries and firms, like in commercial real estate where relationships are everything and meeting folks and in person is important. I think you're going to see, as soon as you see the spread contained, I think you're going to see a bounce back for traditional office settings. Obviously, with some new rules of the road and some changes on cleanliness and hygiene of the office, which, our members already have been on top of that. But I think even now, it'll be even more just because of fear of liability issues.
Do you think also that the pandemic will perhaps increase the need or interest in flexible office space, short-term office space like Office by Regis or WeWork, or even locally like Zip Office, where you can come in, work a couple hours or a day, and then go back home or to your overall office?
It's unclear right now. I mean, there are scenarios where you could see the demand for that industry maintaining and increasing, but there are also scenarios where you could see it not. It really just depends on the individual firms and what their strategies are. I think if their financial models are fitting as many folks in a space as possible, they're going to be in trouble. But also, it's also about, can they maintain a maintenance like budget to sanitize the office as much as you probably will need to do in a shared office like setting. But the other thing is that, in a shared office setting, you don't control any of the HR strategies of the organizations. You control the space. In a traditional office setting, the office owner or building operator can work with the HR team to meet each other halfway. So the traditional setting, in my opinion, is it'll be easier to come up with a strategy on mitigation than in a shared office setting.
Well, before we go to our next question, Brand, I would like to remind our participants joining us this morning on our webinar that we will be taking questions. So feel free to submit your questions on your Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Brandon, recently the Brookings Institute published a really interesting study, or synopsis, I should say, that said the Pittsburgh region is pretty well positioned to weather this current crisis. I think they pointed out that only 15% of our industries here in the region were at risk to be severely affected by the Corona-19 emergency. How do you think we can take advantage of that? And of course, that is a positive for our region, but how do you think we can take advantage of that as well?
If I had the answer to that, I'd make a lot of money.
Right.
But
well, let me know too if you figure that out. I'll go in with you.
I think why that is similar to 2008. We were not at the boom party. So in terms of, as I talked about, those industries that I think are most at risk, hospitality, retail, obviously we've had growth in those sectors. Especially in the restaurant industry. But that being said, we haven't led the nation in that growth. So in terms of, you think about where hospitality and retail is for us versus what it is for Las Vegas. Or obviously that's a special example, but think about Orlando, Miami, LA, a lot of other cities, the percentage of their economy, it's more outsized. That being said, it still will be a hit in the economy, but I think if we're going to, to try, if we're in a similar situation as 2009, where we bounce back first, I think we really need to look at trying to juice as much of the growth out of that as possible. When we, from about the end of 2009 until about 2012, we were in the top tier in terms of growth out of the last recession. And obviously a lot of that had to do, with the energy industry and other sectors as well. But one thing that we didn't see, with the exception of your county and the folks up in Butler County, which is where I live, we didn't see the population growth that needed to be had to sustain long-term, just net growth each year in the hospitality and retail sectors and other sectors as well. I'm hoping that we can try to utilize any sort of, acceleration in our economy, because importantly, if we accelerate first, that means we're more attractive to a lot of folks, and are looking for jobs and relocations and whatnot.
Let me turn your attention really quickly to the construction industry. That's been shut down now for almost 2 months. How is that, you think, going to affect long-term real estate prospects here?
It remains to be seen, obviously. But in my opinion, again, this is not gospel, obviously, but I think it's, some short-term effects. I think a lot of projects that will get a green light on May 1st now have to think about, one, they need to see if they're financially in the same or similar spot as they were a month and a half ago or 2 months ago. And if they're not, then what has changed? Can they work with their project, with their team members on their projects to kind of reconfigure some things? But a big issue that we're going to see, because this is a worldwide issue, is supply. So supply issues. Can you get the lights in your buildings? Can you, is there, exterior materials that are made in China or India or somewhere else? Can you get those in time, right? Because obviously, if you get them 3 months late, that's a big impact on a project. So, can you source your materials? And you may have to think about, some changes on your sourcing of materials, which is going to be a big issue for some projects.
Okay. Brandon, do you mind if we take a few questions from our participants this morning?
Absolutely.
The first one we have is something that's near and dear to both your and I hearts. As you know, chambers, trade associations such as yourselves, pride ourselves on our networking events. And our first question says, or asked, do you think that large conferences and meetings are a thing of the past, at least in the short term? And how do you think this may affect business development and networking?
Yeah, as somebody that does a lot of events as an association, I truly hope not. I'll tell you what, though, I'm looking at one organization, the NFL. The NFL is the organization I'm looking at to really determine what the status of events are for the rest of 2020 and 2021. I think a lot of folks will follow the lead of what the NFL does in this scenario. I don't have a crystal ball. I do think that there will be some limitations on sizes. I don't know if you're going to see certain sort of events over a few thousand folks. I just don't know. And then also, it's really going to, I think it may depend on the market, the sub-market that you're in. And if you're like a hot spot of spread and growth, of the virus at that time. Obviously, if you're in New York right now or in 3 to 6 months, I don't know if you're in the same scenario as if you were, in Iowa, right? It really is going to depend on the sub-markets and also the health departments of those cities and counties.
We have a few questions concerning Washington County that are appearing. And the first is, what do you think about Southpointe? As you know, we've prided ourselves and built ourselves on the energy industry here in Washington County. And of course, with energy prices being low, that's going to affect us. what do you see in terms of our local economy here in Washington County?
Well, I mean, I think in terms of our regional economy overall, as you said, I think we've diversified our economy so that, there's not one set industry that's going to take an outsized role, in our growth and decline, if you will. I think in Washington, you guys have done a good job at diversifying, in your region, in your county. Obviously, energy has been a big part of that equation, but but you guys have a lot of other activities as well. And then the other thing about your, about what you guys have done is, if there are some, a slowdown, which obviously there is, and if there are some consolidations in the industry, I think you guys are well, and I think our region is as well positioned to see some of that consolidation into our region. So, and I think that's got to be the strategy. I think, that's why something like the shell cracker is so important. It really establishes us as, an energy and petrochemical hub, if you will.
I think your point is spot on. We've tried here in Washington County, and I think as a region as a whole, to really diversify our economy. And the more we can do that, the more ability we have, to sustain ourselves in these downturns, much like the Brookings Institution stated. So I think that's a good strategy that we need to continue, is to build upon energy, financial, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, robotics, and others, just to make sure we have a very diverse economy. And your organization has been very helpful in working with us and all the region, really, in seeing those points. And Brandon, if you don't mind me giving you a little shout out here for a minute, I understand that NAIOP Pittsburgh recently won 3 awards from NAIOP National. I understand, and I think you won the Outstanding Contribution of a Chapter Executive. Congratulations on all 3 awards. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, honestly, so we were lucky enough to get a membership growth award 2019. We had about a 20% growth in our membership. I was lucky to get executive of the year for a chapter, and then our board president, Mr. Don Smith, the president at RIDC, was chosen as board leader of the year as well. I'd love to take all the credit, but it's our members. Our members love our association and they're invested. The only thing I did is I took a lot of the lessons I learned in chamber world from folks like Jeff and other chambers and brought it to NAIOP to just excel on what they were already doing well.
And before we wrap up this morning, maybe I want to ask you one final question concerning what's your overall suggestion, strategy, or even thought about how we're managing this current crisis and how we can all get through it together?
Yeah, I think everybody should be trying to put their organization in the best setting that they can to make it through these next 3 to 6 months. Just trying to figure out creative ways to work with your reserves, or if you don't have reserves, make sure that you're engaged from what's going on at the federal and state level. There's going to be a lot of stimulus. There's already a 450 billion dollar second part of the PPP loan program. That should be out in a few weeks. It passed the Senate this week, and it should pass the House in the next few hours. Just stay engaged. Try to figure out strategies that you can get to the other side of this, which is what we're doing at NAIOP and what a lot of our members are doing as well. Because importantly, I do think that you could see one of the fastest recoveries on the other side of this. obviously it's important, and and I'm watching for the sentiment in the economy as much as anybody else. But I do think if we can focus on containing the spread, I do think that you could see a V-shaped return in growth on the other side of this. It's just a matter of when is that.
Brandon Mendoza, thank you very much for being with us, and also all the good work you're doing at NAIOP Pittsburgh. We appreciate your thoughts this morning, and also your constant ideas and partnerships with us in Washington County. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Appreciate it, Jeff, and thank you to everybody that joined.
Thank you, and thank you to our participants for being with us this morning. Again, we'd like to thank Vanth Surgical Hospital, Blueprints, CNX Resources, Peacock Keller, and Single Source Property Solutions for being our sponsors for this morning's morning briefing. Next week, April 30th at 8 o'clock in the morning, we'll be joined by David Spiegelmeyer, president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition. He'll talk to us about the energy industry and the challenges they're having, as well as opportunities moving forward. So thank you for being with us this morning, and have a great day.